only about like that much, a few inches.
Okay.
And there's a dude coming down with a weapon coming out at us, and one shot through the doors hit him in the back of the hallway. And so I rubbed that in Dom's face now, because that would have been his,
right,
for sure. The war in the flesh overseas in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Africa is a cakewalk compared to the spiritual war. Something that we started, something that we blew up. That's our responsibility.
Savage is too nice of a word.
What do you say? Oh, he was having a rough day? It really comes down to this. How bad do you want it? Because that is what we think a man is.
They're setting you up for failure. They're sending you out on the battlefield with no weapon.
For you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow.
All right, Juliet.
Yeah.
So I'll put us in context of where we are, and then I want to kind of stop and say something about the process we went through.
Mm-hmm.
This is the point in the story where you're showing up at your squadron. You've made it through selection training. You're now an operator in a Tier 1 unit. We went through great pains in writing this to use terminology that would get approved. I read every book basically by every Tier 1 guy and saw what got approved and what got blacked out. And we used the terminology that seemed to get approved. We submitted it to DOD. They ran it through the command. They made us change a couple words to their liking, but nothing. We stuck with that. Right?
An 8-month process.
8-month process.
Actually.
Right. Government efficiency with the COVID right in the middle of it probably helped. So you've done all the right things in terms of getting approvals, but you've gotten some crap.
Yeah. A little bit of crap. I wouldn't say a lot of crap. I mean, there's going to be naysayers, and no matter what I do,
right,
it doesn't matter. And then the whole reason for putting this out is we did the Mike Ritland podcast, and a lot of comments, and we've talked about this previously. A lot of comments like, "Hey, you should put this into a book." And little do they know that I kind of started putting that to a book like years before, but it kind of just sat on a shelf.
Yeah, facade.
Yes, that was the title of the book at the time, and so those comments were coming up. It was like, "You should write a book. You should write a book." And that's where I was like, "Hey, Keith, like, listen to this." And I asked you, and you're like, "Yeah, we should." I'm like, "All right, cool." Just the way things were kind of lining up, and if I go back to my childhood, like Arnold Schwarzenegger, his films, Sylvester Stallone, his films, Jean-Claude Van Damme, his films, like those are the things that got me into like just totally intrigued by the military, kind of being the protector, self-defense style stuff. So, it's like a doctor. If a doctor comes up with a new technique or a way to handle something that will save lives, I mean, I feel like they should almost be obligated to need to pass that down to the next generation so we can level up and get better. And it's kind of the same thing. The military is no different. And we don't talk about confidential things, timelines, or certain names in this book.
And you're not giving away tactics.
No.
I mean, there are guys on YouTube, former operators, who are like giving you step-by-step how to clear a road and all that. And whether or not that's appropriate is another conversation. But we're not doing that in the book.
No. Just telling you a story. My personal, what I went through, because it's not about the war stuff.
Right.
It's about the struggles I went on behind the scenes, and overcoming that is because everybody deals with this in some way, shape, or fashion.
The war stuff is almost the hook to get people to read
pretty much
the other stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think about it, and I've heard others say this, I'm blatantly stealing this from people, but the guys that wrote books, the Vietnam guys, right? Let's go. The World War II guys wrote books that inspired the Vietnam guys. The Vietnam guys wrote books that inspired the guys that served maybe in the 80s.
Yep.
Then you had, the Dick Marcinkos of the world writing books that maybe inspired the next generation. And that's a constant thing, and that's necessary.
And everyone's not going to be on board with that. And you know what? That's okay. I'm not offended. You can have your opinion. Rock on. That's great.
But all that said, and it's not like we just said, "Oh, we got this DoD approval. Now we're going to tell all the secrets." We're not. We're sticking to the script, right? If people want to go find that stuff somewhere else, they can do it.
Yep.
So what we're going to talk about now is when you show up at your squadron, which we don't even name. What is that like? I mean, this is a long road. This is a road that started, elementary school?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we could go back there. I mean, obviously it wasn't the SEAL thing back then. It was just the military. You know, I didn't even know about the different branches and especially spec ops in that branch. But yeah, I went back. It's like finally realizing that there's another level after just the SEAL teams. You can go to the tier 1 side and finally there and then finally get to the team. And it's just like, whoa, this is awesome. So
what's that like walking into that team room? I'm assuming that's kind of the meeting point where you first.
It's kind of another like pinch me. Am I sleeping or is this real or whatever it is? No, it's just like there's just artifacts. I wouldn't say artifacts, but like history of the certain wars and combats. Like Houdet and Kusei's boots were there. AK-47 chandeliers. It was just awesome. And then just the experience on the men that were in that unit was just that alone. Being around that much experience is like. Film me, you know what I mean? It's like, because they've been there, they've done that. I've heard all the stories and
living legends.
Yeah, especially because when I got there, they just got back from leave from a deployment. So they were just there. Tons of war stories. They debriefed it. They showed it like, hey, well, actually, so tactics, I wouldn't say change, but they kind of modify a little bit based off of like, you know, a certain war zone or the enemy's tactics will change the way we do things.
Right.
Obviously.
Yeah, they start figuring out what you're doing.
Yeah, you got to evolve, exactly.
Yeah. So,
but it was amazing, dude. It was just insane.
What was the environment like in terms of were the guys cool?
Super cool, super humble, super focused, experienced. I wouldn't say callous for some reason kind of comes to my mind, but but in a good way. They just like me not seeing a lot of combat, I'd be like, oh my God, that's so cool. Where they're like, dude, that's happens like 5 times this week. Yes, exactly. So it was a little bit different. I was definitely, you know, and the other new guys that were checking in were definitely like, this is so cool. Can't wait to get overseas. But the guys that were there, been there, took down a bunch of dudes and lost good guys. It's, you know, it takes its toll, but you don't know what that toll is until after the fact.
Right. Yeah, and it's all, you're not seeing that.
No, you're not seeing that.
You're seeing all the cool parts.
You're seeing the op right in front of your face.
Yeah, and I think by necessity, right? If you went through that career worrying about what life is going to be like 20 years from now, that wouldn't work out well.
It wouldn't work out well, yeah.
So you get there. I know you love gear.
I love gear.
Everyone who doesn't love gear. Anybody watching this probably loves some gear.
Everyone loves gear.
You show up and it's like, this is the coolest gear you can possibly get, and so much of it. What is that?
Yeah, the gear is just the best.
Tactical shopping spree.
At the time, it was there. Like a lot of the stuff you couldn't even go buy. I mean, there'd be like a knockoff or like something close to, but a lot of things, no matter what it was, I mean, we had like these big cages and we put all our gear. You'd have your jungle stuff, you'd have your Arctic stuff, you'd have your jump gear, your dive gear, your CQB, like everyday gear, land warfare. There's like all these different gear setups depending on where and what you're doing.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, you're like pretty much your armor, because it was pretty much Iraq, Afghanistan, and your setup was kind of the same for those two.
Okay.
You would go on the lighter side for Afghanistan, especially for longer walks in the terrain, but it all depends. But I mean, I remember like just going by the cage and there'd be, you know, a cage where all our stuff is. Like you get your own personalized big cage, probably like almost, I'd say probably from where the Unafraid sign is back this way, size cage of all this stuff like hanging and shelves. But you'd walk by and like there'd be like a new package in there like every day. Because usually we would just keep it unlocked so people can throw stuff in there. Like a new GPS, new this, like just new things all the time. Sometimes it'd be like multiple things. Like, oh my God, what do I do?
Right.
What am I going to do with my hands?
I don't carry all this stuff.
So, but it was cool.
And I'm sure people are sending the latest, greatest stuff for you guys to sort of try out.
Yeah, right? because they know what if tier 1 units are biting on it, it's going to filter down to the rest of the military eventually.
They might as well give it to you guys because they're going to sell a lot of them.
Yep.
Yeah, that to me would be, I don't know.
Because you give them the yes or no.
Right.
So,
or hey, change this one thing. It'll be better.
Yep.
That was one thing that I've found interesting is the amount of innovation that comes, as it should, from guys. You know, you get it, your nod retention thing, or you know, people putting their own real world spin on gear.
Yep.
That helps.
I mean, because these are guys that are actually operating, not operating like getting on a truck and driving from point A to point B and then offloading a truck. These are guys that are actually operating overseas, like I think we mentioned in the book, is at the time we learned that 80% of the offensive operations in Afghanistan were done by us and our Tier 1 Army Rangers that were attached to us.
That's crazy.
80%.
And so you're talking about a handful of guys doing 80%.
80%.
It was every night.
Consistent. And that was a specific time that I was there. It wasn't like that the whole time.
Right.
But for a while, I was like, hey, we're just doing strategic things. We're just taking
amount of the combat.
80%.
A lot of experience very rapidly.
100%.
Right?
Yeah, it was cool.
And if you think back historically, those guys we talked about, you could have joined the military in 1975, done 25 years, maybe never, ever had a
maybe
maybe
one op.
Maybe you were
maybe you like took a picture or something.
Yeah. And those guys were probably legendary because they had done an op.
Yeah.
Right. And then now you guys are
not their fault. It's all a timing thing. Like what's going on in the world.
The war being at peace was not their fault.
Yeah, it's not their fault.
They would have loved to have done that. But just point being, you had guys of your generation that got almost several lifetimes worth of combat experience in a very short period of time.
I don't know if that will ever happen again.
Yeah, hopefully not.
Hopefully not. Two big conflict zones that we were deploying nonstop. I mean, it was just it wasn't like, hey, where are we going? It was really, it was like, hey, we going to Iraq?
Right.
Or are we going to Afghanistan?
And both conflicts that favored the use of you guys as an asset.
100%.
These weren't tank battles. These were submarine battles, right?
They were.
It was go in a room to kill
ops.
this bad guy.
Yep. Very strategic.
So you start out, the guys were coming off a deployment, right? So the beginning of the cycle in terms of a workup.
Yep.
What does that look like?
So they get back from their leave. I think we actually checked in when they were on leave. Like they already got back. They were back in the States and they went back. So it was not a lot of people. It was just kind of the new guys trying to figure out what the heck do we do with ourselves? Like just trying to not do anything wrong. And they came back and then we just started. We did our first trip, and I don't know what our first trip was, but I think it was probably like shooting, making sure our guns are zeroed in, and then we started doing house runs, because that's everything, is learning how to, like, you're bringing new dudes in for guys that have just been overseas, and there's a certain way to do certain things from, we're infilling into our target, we're on target, we're securing the target, here's what we do after to get whatever, more information, interrogate certain individuals if there's anybody alive, like all these things, like all that goes into, that's another whole piece.
Right.
Where the leadership needs to maintain things, team leaders are doing their stuff, everyone's got their specific job and what they do, so you would just go over that stuff. And then once you kind of figured out how that worked, based off of the experience that's happening right the now, not 14 years ago, but the now, then we would go on to like more trips and stuff like that.
So the CQB is the bread and butter.
CQB is everything. I wouldn't say everything, but it's
a lot. It's
during our time, it was pretty much everything.
So as an individual operator, and especially as a new guy, there's a point where you start going to your own schools, right? Just you are going, or maybe you and a couple guys. What are those for you? You're a breacher. What do those schools look like? What are you doing? More
intensive breaching for like lock-picking schools, alarm bypass school, breaking into cars, like stuff like that. I'd be an amazing thief.
Burglar school.
Pretty much burglar school. And then getting through ship hatches, big walls, rebar and force, like different things like that, like, hatches going down, hatches going up, like sideways, all these things, because that's my responsibility as my job as a breacher, was to get through whatever, from a wooden fence that you could just kick over to a wall that's like over 20 feet thick. So you need to learn how to like use your explosives and calculate all that stuff. So
you're doing that. The snipers are doing their thing. Maybe some guys at a place to learn how to fly.
Some guys are climbing. Yeah, guys are doing like climbing up mount whatever. Right. So yeah.
Fro is off climbing.
Yep. He's like on El Cap or something.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then there's a point where you guys all come together.
Yeah, so at your individual schools, you kind of come together and you start operating at the team level. And then you operate like at the troop level, which is a couple of teams. And then you kind of combine the troops and do a couple big exercises with everyone doing certain things.
And one of the kind of the unique things, I guess, about operating at that level is it all comes down to money, right? The budgets, you get not only get the big missions, but you get the big training. You're not running around some concrete block fake city. You're in Dallas downtown, landing on the roof of a real building and doing What's that like?
That's awesome, man. I think the first time I did that was actually, it was Denver Houston, I believe was the first one. And they've got the little birds, and they've got 60s, and you get 160th like coming in to help us out, and because that's our pilots, because they're the best in the military, period. And you're just doing these operations, taking down like a couple levels of a skyscraper, or going to abandoned buildings, and just doing all these like real world big like mission profiles. It was just cool. It was awesome, and you got to like coordinate obviously with the police and the authorities of that city, and they would jump in and help us RSO and stuff like that. It was super cool.
And it's funny now, not now, it's I've seen it a couple times over the years of somebody will do that, right? And it's there's black helicopters circling the X Bank building or whatever, and then you have like the Alex Joneses of the world, like, oh, this is the government training to kill its citizens. Like, no, this is
to go overseas, guys. Yeah.
So you do that. We in the book describe you guys taking down a cruise ship, which is a real thing.
Yes.
What was that like?
It was cool. I mean, a cruise ship is not small. I mean, that's one of the Navy SEALs' primary mission is hostage rescue on a cruise ship. And what's unique about a cruise ship is, one, it's in the water. So getting on the cruise ship it's not like you just, like, we know this ship is going to get taken over, so let's like pretend to be just enjoying a vacation and we'll just, give them our tickets and go hang out and have some daiquiris. No, you got to figure a way to get on the ship coming from the water or from the air. Then you got to take it down, and the ship is a labyrinth of hallways and rooms, and it's ginormous. But it's a very real thing because, again, you're out there in the middle of nowhere, and we can see all the issues that was happening with Somalia, with the pirates off the coast of the Horn of Africa. You can see why we have this mission. But that's what we do. But the command would rent a big cruise ship, and it would just, all it would do is go back and forth on the coast for however many miles. And we would go out there and we would just do drill after drill, like coming from the boat, coming from the helicopter, fast ripping down, whatever it may be, and taking down the ship. That was ridiculous. And we describe one of those operations in the book.
And one of the guys who was sort of one of your haters, Team 2, who did not make it to the Tier 1 level, was actually a role player.
Right.
In one of those things. It's one of those,
Yeah.
And you didn't have to say anything.
I didn't have to say anything. I didn't have to say anything.
Yeah. Did you get to eat some of that cruise ship food?
Man, I think it was it wasn't like,
you can eat lobster.
The Carnival Cruise or Royal Caribbean, if they're even around anymore, like putting on like a buffet. It wasn't like that at all. I think it was just normal, like stuff I'd get like at the galley or chow hall back at the beach.
I picture you guys get all done and you're up sitting.
Dude, I wish, but no, it was definitely not that. It was just, I mean, we would do iteration training. I mean, at least over 12 hours a day. We were nonstop. Early in the morning, try to get a workout in or something, and we go right into it for hours. Take lunch, go into it for hours, do dinner, do a little bit more, do a big one at the end, debrief it, and then chill until the next morning. You do the same thing.
And you're doing hot washes after every one of those.
Yeah, you're talking about like, hey, we messed up here. This is good. We need to fix this. Let's try it this way. What if this happens? All the contingencies that you could possibly think of. You're going through it all, and it was never a dull moment. And you're exhausted.
And you're a new guy.
Yeah,
you're drinking through a fire hose in terms of information, trying to just not screw up.
Pretty much, yeah. I wouldn't say I was at that time. I was a new guy, but I mean, I definitely wasn't there for 5-10 years like some of the other guys.
Right.
But
and your very first breach at the Tier 1 level.
Oh, gosh.
Tell me about
the
that.
only time. It was a failed breach. Like, it went to hit the detonator and it didn't go off. And it was the rookie mistake is you check all your charges before you initiate it. Is your responsibility. And someone just took it out of their pouch like, hey, just use this charge. Because I didn't even know I was going to do anything. Like, they were just like, Eddie, you will be the team breacher. I was like, well, that's cool. We need to go make charges. Like, no, just use this. And the way the initiator was with the caps, it was like this, and it needs to be flush for it to initiate. And it was a quick fix, like, boom, failed. But like, and my team leader's like, this is what we got right here. And I'm like, oh, man, bro. One job, dude. Good job, Carl. And so I fixed it real fast, and then we sent it, and that was it. But never had a failed breach after that.
Any hazing from that?
No. Just like I was like, yeah, I should have checked. It was my fault.
Yeah.
And but everyone knew like I had nothing on me. Like no,
Okay.
you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It wasn't
So
like they knew the deal. They knew what was going on.
Yeah. So you guys complete your workup. You're going to deploy to Anbar, Iraq. Any different feeling in this is now your third combat deployment, if I have the numbers right?
I would say the first real combat deployment.
Right?
Yeah.
So did it feel different even before you went? I mean, did you know?
Yeah, because you just know the stories. It's not like, oh, we had a string of gunfights. It was like, hey, for the last 5 deployments we've done, you're engaging almost every night. So it's like you know
what you're gonna get.
You know what's coming, and you're excited until it starts happening. Why was I excited about getting shot? But you learn a lot about yourself.
Do you remember your first op with those guys?
My first op, no, I don't remember my first op. I'm sure it was insane.
We talk about your first kill.
I remember that.
Which, maybe it hit somebody in the back of the Humvee on the 240, but probably not. Right?
Probably not.
Yeah. So this was like.
This is the first, like, there is a dead man right there.
So walk me through that.
You know what? I'm going to leave that for the book.
Okay.
I'm going to leave that for the book. I'm going to leave that for the book.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you this. After that goes on, because I don't know that we go into this in too deep a detail, what's that feel like? Is it anything? Is it a drug? Is it...
Pride. I mean, good pride. Like, I was so happy to take out a bad guy. And guys, which I hear all the time, it's like, oh, you're a murderer. You're killing for an agenda, for your government, which you know what? They're right. Very true. There's definitely agendas going on, but that's
not your job.
That's not what that's no. It's like, hey, we're trained to go get these bad guys that we know they're bad based off of X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And that was our job and our little sliver of the pie in the big pie. So we went and got it. I felt great, man, and I got addicted. I mean, addicted. I don't think we're at the addicted chapter yet, are we?
No, we're getting there, though.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I mean, you told me one time that it went from... It became, if you went out and you didn't get a kill.
I was mad. I felt like a failure.
And what's crazy to me, and I've been around where you
I might need counseling for that.
Maybe. When like somebody else will like trick you so they can get the kill, it like becomes like competitive. Right?
Yeah, like
the guys,
Dom and I would.
Hey, I'm going to tell you to go around there knowing that the guys are actually in here.
I remember Dom would be set up like in the perfect, because you would kind of learn on like where the action's going to be.
Right.
And you would try to get that position.
Right.
So, and I always, which is good because obviously
play shortstop.
Yeah, 100%. And you know it's going to be somewhere where there's like an access point, like a door or a window. So me being the breacher, I have to be here, right? And I remember Dom one time he was holding on the door. I was like, "Hey, the team leader needs you." He's like, "Really?" Because he knew he had the spot. He knew it. It was he had the only vantage point like of this door. Yeah. And it was a double door on this white house. I can still see the house. And I was like, team leader needs, like, seriously, I'm like, dude, do you think I'd make that up? And he gets up. As soon as he gets away, I literally, sit down, just start focusing on the thing. And he comes back. He's like, you jerk. And he just moved next to me. And it just happened to be an op where it was we threw a concussion grenade and the explosion. There's no shrapnel with a concussion grenade. Or a thermobaric. It's just the overpressure. Okay. It's like the blast that opens it and opened the door only about like that much, a few inches. Okay. And there's a dude coming down with a weapon coming out at us, and one shot through the doors hit him in the back of the hallway. And so I rubbed that in Dom's face now because that would have been his, right? For sure.
To a lot of folks, that might be a weird thing to get competitive about, right?
It is what it is.
It is what it is, and that's. I don't think we can stress enough. These are really, really, really bad. Very bad guys.
Yeah, if we're going after them, tier 1 units coming after you, you're bad. And you would see footage of what they were doing during day. Right. You would get reports from conventional forces. These guys were tracked here, and this is what they did. These are the guys that are in charge of putting these bombs on the road from this point to this point. It wasn't just, hey, go to this. We knew, for the most part, who we were going after.
You're targeting specific.
I mean, you know their names. Yeah. You get some pretty good details with our technology and how it can gather information on what's going on.
Yeah. And I can't imagine that 20 years later what that's like.
Oh, it's way different now.
Yeah. I'm sure AI components.
Oh, it's insane. Yeah.
Yeah.
Got Iron Man running around
this isn't
everywhere.
some guy who picked the wrong team. This is like the guy who would have
He's
been
bad.
in the beheading video holding the knife.
They are the bad ones. Yeah, for sure.
Barely qualify as human beings. Mm-hmm. So no regrets there.
None.
Yeah.
None.
You got regrets in your life. That's not.
Yeah, like I said before, and I still think it's like I regret the shots that I didn't take because I know, because I mean, we saw from one of their shots a whole family got killed, a bunch of kids.
We'll get to that.
So
just in the next chapter. Anything else from that deployment stand out?
No, it was just cool. Like the op tempo, it was so awesome. Like we always. One of the biggest things that any commander doesn't want to have is their guys sitting around because we usually do dumb stuff. And that's very true. We got to again, a Tom's disease, terrified of missing stuff thing going on. But if you're opping all the time, you're just like amped up, you're happy, you that sense of pride and you're proud of your job. Because I mean, dude, you went for forever and it's like the greatest scenario in special forces spec ops community history is going on with the two war fronts that are going on. It's like, dude, this is you couldn't ask for this. Like this is insane.
Yeah. Not only did you prepare your whole life for this, but it was the opportunity of several lifetimes in terms of.
Oh man, dude, just the number. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of operations.
Yeah.
Usually you might get one or two, maybe.
Anybody? Any close calls? Anybody get hurt on that first deployment? You remember?
On the first deployment, I think we had a couple guys get some shrapnel, and I think that's about it.
So still,
this is kind of before the suicide vest became really big.
okay. You guys are still sort of invincible at this point, at least.
Kind of, pretty much. Yeah, we're pretty good.
And
Casualties are very, very minimal.
we'll get to that shattering of that invincibility on the next chapter.
Yep.
Anything to leave us off on here?
No, I think that's it, man. That was Juliet.
That's what this says.
Juliet. Boom.
All right. Thanks.
All right, guys. See ya.